Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Adi, and today I've got a team report from the Brisbane Regionals in Australia, and I've got our top 8 contender, Jack Lloyd. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well, Artie. I hope you're going well yourself. It's been a great weekend. I've been working very hard on this team, and because I've been looking for that result with such few regionals. It's nice to finally get my name out there, and that's kind of what I wanted out of the weekend. So it's good to be able to come on here and share it with everyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. And you did really well with a very interesting team. A little bit like nothing too out there, but you do have 3 fighting types, so it's definitely a little bit unorthodox. And like you said, you haven't had a tournament so far this season, or at least a major tournament so far this season. Tell me about the build up to this tournament and how you ended up deciding on the team that you ended up running.
Yeah, so basically at the very beginning of Reg E, basically coming from Reg D, I noticed everything was very, very physical. And so I was like, I've played Iron Defense Body Press in Sword and Shield, so let's do that again. And so I built a team actually with Hisui and Gudra, but I ran into someone on ladder using Kommo, and I hadn't played, I never played in Gen 7, so I didn't really know what Kommo was about. And so then when I absolutely got destroyed by it on ladder using Iron Defense Body Press, I was like, oh, this seems like better. You know, it gets stab body press. That kind of seems like a good thing. So I built around that and did very well with it. And I kind of stuck with it and thought, well, I'll probably be using this for Brisbane. And then it won Sacramento. And I was like, okay, I'm definitely going forward with this. And that's kind of where the whole idea came from.
Yeah, and you sent me a couple versions of the team. Originally, it looks like you had the Ogre Pawn Rock to start out. At some point, you had a what else? You had a Cresselia at some point on the team. Talk to me about how your team has changed over time.
Yeah, so the one with the Cresselia is the kind of the original team. There was like Landorus on there at one point, and there was a She Water on there at one point, but basically it was using Lunar Blessing to support Kommo, and this was kind of my original idea even before Sacramento had broken through and it had won. And then basically all I did was when Sacramento won, I changed Iron Hands for Rillaboom because I liked the terrain healing with the leftovers. And then I won a Limitless tour and was like, wow, this is really good. Basically, then what happened was the team you've got on screen right now, the Ogapon one, I stuck with this team all the way until literally the day before the tournament. And it was really good. Like a week before LAIC, I made an ult on Showdown and I went 30-2 on best of 3 with that team there. And Ogapon Rock was very valuable. It was able to beat Tornadus, beat Shiyu, and generally have a better matchup into Heatran and Amoonguss, which was all things I was struggling with. And so using Cornerstone, it was really awesome. But then all of a sudden, because of LAIC, nearly every single Tornadus was going Steel Terror, running Protect, or going really bulky. And so it lost a lot of value. And so, I went to registration on the Friday. I said to my friends, I need to try one more thing because I've lost too many Showdown matches in the last day and I don't feel confident. I went home, I put Iron Hands on, and I said, okay, let me play a few Showdown matches. I won all 5 Showdown matches, and I went, okay, I'm locking this in tomorrow, and we'll see how we go. And that was basically the story of how I got to where I was.
Yeah, that's crazy to make such a big change the night before the tournament. Certainly, it sounds like it panned out for you. But you want to talk to me about the team itself, maybe the individual Pokemon, and why they are trained the way they are.
Yeah, no worries. So basically, the major reason why I was so skeptical to run both Iron Hands and Rillaboom on the team was I never felt I felt like Rillaboom wouldn't be as good as it was without the Assault Vest, but Protect just became so much better in a lot of circumstances, especially against Tornadus. So that was the reason why. And first of all, Iron Hands is just too bulky, so you're kind of throwing if you don't have it on your team at this point because it's just ridiculous, as usage stats shows. But essentially, I run a bit more HP spread to live more like Urshifu hits and Ogerpon hits, and that did come up in the tournament. I lived on like 4 HP from an Ogerpon and was able to kill it, and that was massive. And like the attack investment is just kind of what was left over from like living, Terra Moonblast from Flutter Mane, and just having generally enough speed to outspeed some other Iron Hand sets. So that's kind of what Iron Hands does, but it's basically just a bulky monster and will just sit in front of you and deal damage. The Rillaboom is the next one. It's basically, it has enough to live just a Specs Moonblast raw. It has speed investment to outspeed the Heatran spread on like your typical balance teams, like the Pulchua balance team. And the attack investment, basically, if you Terra, you'll be able to pick up all Urshifu's bundles and, some Flutter Manes. And that's kind of what the power of Terra Grass Meadow Plate was there for. And that was very useful to have in the back. Obviously, kind of the star of the team was the Kommo-o. Terra Steel just pairs very well with Bulletproof, and it is the best version. I played around with Terra Fire, but Urshifu Rapid kind of puts that idea in the bin. So having like 156 defense, Bold Nature is enough to KO Ogerpon at +2 when it has no bulk. And like at +4, you're doing like 90% to Iron Hands, and the calcs you can get out of that Pokemon is ridiculous. The speed investment was basically to try and speed creep some Heatrans, because like having Flash Cannon into it and Earth Power is scary, so trying to outspeed that is kind of a priority. And then the 4 special attack, just to make it so that you're always 2-hit KOing Flutter Mane, and then the special defense investment to tank the Moonblast when you're Terra Steel. Heatran is just bulky and hits hard, and that's kind of what it was. There was not much thought that went into the spread other than 252 Modest, because I didn't want to die to other Earth Power from Life Orb Heatrans. Urshifu, Adamant, hit harder, that's best for it. And the Flutter Mane spread, it lives Adamant, Chen Pao, Sucker Punch, and it is able to outspeed nearly every other booster Flutter that I came into contact with. And then Moonblast will always be a 2-hit KO on nearly every Iron Hand set. So that's basically what those spreads did.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think, in my head, especially since it's a team built around Kommo-o, I'm comparing it to Michael's team that, of course, won Sacramento. And there's only 2 Pokemon in common other than the Kommo-o, which are the Rillaboom, which is also Meadow Plate, and the Flutter Mane, which is a very different set. He was running a spec set. But I actually really like some of the differences here, just because Kommo-o kind of fell off. It hasn't seen a ton of play since Michael won that regional. And I think that, his team was maybe a little less well-positioned moving forward, especially with Goldengo being a lot more popular, especially with things like Amoonguss being a lot more popular, both of which I think Kommo-o can struggle with. And it looks like your team, with that Urshifu Dark that helps with Goldengo, with the Heatran instead of the Arcanine, really helps with Goldengo and Amoonguss. And so I think your team might be a little more well-positioned in what the metagame looks like now.
Yeah, that was the main idea. And one thing that I'll direct your attention to is the taunt on the Flutter Mane. That was absolutely crucial into any Trick Room matchup, any Amoonguss matchup. And I think every person that's asked me about the spread has gone, oh, but do you miss Shadow Ball? And because I had Heatran and Urshifu for Goldengo, I never once missed Shadow Ball, except for when I played the Terra Ghost Amoonguss in top 8. That was the only time where I wish I had it. But other than that, it was definitely the right call.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And again, like you said, most of your sets aren't too off standard. You talked a little bit about the damage and the reach that you get from that Rillaboom, and that's the one set that isn't super common. But Michael did run that too, so maybe that's. Do you think that works especially well with Kommo-o? Do you think that's just like a good set?
Well, Rillaboom is just probably the best partner for Kommo-o, because having the terrain healing, like it came up so much that you're kind of throwing if you don't have the double healing, because the sheer amount of attacks that Kommo can eat and then heal 12% each turn is absolutely ridiculous. So I wanted Rillaboom on the team, and then like Michael had the the Miracle Seed as well, but he had Taunt as well. I obviously had Taunt on the Flutter main, so I think Protect is overall better, because then you can sit in front of a Tornadus and you don't have to worry, and then you can, like, you know, bait an Urshifu Protect or a Flutter main Protect or something like that. And I found more value in that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so, I guess on that note, do you want to tell us a little bit about how to actually play the team? Did you have any really common game plans or any common modes or any teams that you faced that you knew you had to do one very specific line into?
Yeah, so essentially the team itself, you nearly 99% of the time want Kommo-o in the back, because people love, you know, Flutter main is its worst enemy. As you can see, there's a lot of tools to deal with Flutter main. You've got Heavy Slam, Flash Cannon, you know, Grassy Glide, and Wicked Blow, and they all deal with that. But having Kommo in the back is kind of crucial, because you can't just get sniped by a random fairy move, or, you know, get hit by Terra Blast before you set up from a Landorus. But yeah, so you always want it in the back. Generally, I would normally lead like Fake Out plus like a Heatran, or the other mode is Flutter main plus Urshifu, or Flutter main plus Heatran. Because Icy Wind plus Wicked Blow can just devastate so many teams. There's not many, like, especially Choice Scarf Landorus. If they're not jolly, just going for Icy Wind plus Wicked Blow, they normally won't have a switch in unless it's Iron Hands. And so you can punish that a lot and just completely remove a Pokemon turn 1, which makes the end game for Kommo-o much easier. And I guess that's kind of what this team's about. You're meant to remove the problem Pokemon and then just use Kommo to win. You can also run it without Kommo. Like Iron Hands, Heatran, Urshifu, Rillaboom were really good into a lot of teams just without the Kommo itself. And, you know, if they're very special attacking heavy, then that's kind of what you have to go towards. But it still works really well. I think some notable game plans is for, like, for example, Chupper's team, which mainly Tornadus teams. You always want Iron Hands, because you just want to get rid of Tornadus, because Kommo hates Tornadus so much. And like you said, there's 3 fighting types on the team. So having to get rid of something, you know, like Tornadus hits 3 Pokemon super effectively, hits Heatran super effectively if it terrors, and just generally does a lot to Iron Hands. So Taunt is a massive issue and you need to get rid of it. And then you're able to normally just use Kommo-o to sit in front of Flutter main, kill the rest of the team, and then, you know, you take out the Flutter main somewhere along that with a Heatran or an Urshifu. So that's the game plan for, like, especially Chupper's team or Tornadus teams, is just leverage Kommo in the back and then remove Tornadus as quickly as possible. And then for something like the Polchu or Balance team, you generally want to, like, Kommo-o is a bit weaker in that because they have Heatran, Amoonguss, and Flutter, but it doesn't mean you can't bring it, because it's very good into Iron Hands, and it kind of makes Iron Hands a useless spot for them. So having something like the Taunt Flutter is crucial for the Amoonguss. The Heatran is crucial for their Heatran and also their Amoonguss. And then generally Rillaboom does the most damage into Flutter main, or if, like, and then Kommo can beat Roaring Moon, Iron Hands, and Landorus. So just having to remove those Pokemon is probably the most important. And then for, like, Blood Moon teams, they nearly always want to lead Follow Me plus Trick Room, because I have Taunt Flutter main. And so the easiest way to punish that is to lead Flutter main plus Heatran, and then just click Taunt into the Trick Rooming slot, and then Heat Wave. And if they don't click Follow Me, then Heatran will still live and fire off a Heat Wave anyway. And then if they do click follow me, then Heatran will generally underspeed, normally like the Ogerpon or something that they've clicked follow me with. And so you basically just get a free KO in the first 2 turns, and all of a sudden they're struggling after that. So it's kind of just like you've got a good matchup into Dozo and Indeedee Armarouge because of Urshi Dark and Rillaboom. And so you kind of just basically leveraging the fact that you have a lot of answers into individual Pokemon, and then using Kommo to clean up anything that you didn't account for.
Makes a lot of sense. I guess I'm curious, what percentage of games did you feel like you brought Kommo-o to? Is it 100%, 90%? What do you think?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because the night before, when I was practicing on Showdown, I played 5 sets, and I only brought the Kommo to 1 set on Showdown. And so I kind of went into the tournament being like, oh, well, if it's my 6th Mon, then it's a pretty good 6th Mon to have. But on the actual day, like my run, I reckon I brought it to 5 sets. And in those sets itself, I reckon I bring it to like 80% of games. So if it was good in the matchup, it normally just came all the time. But, you know, there was matches where I did have to leave it at home, especially like my last match was against Goldango Rain. And so it doesn't do anything in that matchup. So like having, you know, it was generally a good 6 Mon, and it did come a lot more than I expected on the day, but it's not crucial for the team, and you can just generally play a good balanced matchup into other teams if you need to.
Yeah, makes sense. Can't go wrong with Iron Hands, Rillaboom, Heatran, Fluttermane, right? That's just exactly. This is the 4 best monsters.
Yeah, it's so dumb. They're crazy.
Yeah, just the biggest stat sticks in the format. And so I guess on that note, let's talk about your the tournament itself. So you, of course, you played at Brisbane, which I think you said was like 6 people short of having Day 2 Swiss or something like that. Which
yeah, something around those.
Led to an absolutely brutal tournament structure where you have 8 rounds and a hard 7-1 makes cut. Not a single person who went 6-2 made cut. So you knew you had to go 7-1. Tell me a little bit about your tournament run.
So I was very fortunate that like my first 2 matchups were snow matchups, and Kommo has an absolutely like almost 100% guaranteed win into those teams, because it literally just clicks Terra Steel and they almost can't hit it. My round 2 was a bit more challenging because they had high horsepower on Baxcalibur, but it still doesn't really do enough damage. And I think the funny thing about that was my game 2 came down to me on call locked into Fake Out on Iron Hands versus Ninetales that only had Icy Wind. And so I had to PP store my own Fake Out. So that I'm never going to PP up my Fake Out again after that experience. So that was interesting. But yeah, so that was good. The Salamence, I disrespected game 1, but then after that, I was able to beat it. The Ogerpon Fire, Kommo once again has an absolutely amazing matchup into. It is like for his was no bulk, so I literally just got to +2 and then would KO it immediately. And so it was basically a non-threat, because essentially I could just lead it in the back, and then as soon as he had Rillaboom and Ogerpon on the field at the same time, I would just bring out Kommo. They couldn't touch it, and then I would just set up 1 Iron Defense and then basically kill the whole team. And that was kind of the game plan into that. So that was a pretty quick set, which is great because Ogerpon Fire can give like a lot of headaches for most teams. So that was pretty good. Then after that, we went... So my loss was to the Paul Chua Balance. And like this, Kieran's a very good player. He also cut. And he basically just played it as like it seemed like he'd played my team like 6 different times, because essentially he just leveraged the fact that I couldn't kill his Heatran with my Heatran because he had Sugar Berry. And then it kind of just fell apart after that because Amoonguss was able to do too much, because I never wanted to bring in my Heatran because it would always lose to his Heatran, and I needed to save Terra for Kommo if I was bringing it because they had Fluttermane. So he played it extremely smart and bring the best 4 Pokemon both times, and so it kind of just fell apart after that. But it was an interesting matchup because generally it seems like that team I have a 50-50 into. It gets hard if they have Perish Song on the Flutter main, which I am the team that the fourth slot actually matters into because I've seen that tech so much and it's actually really annoying for me. But yeah, so that was an interesting one. Kieran was so good. He got top 8 as well. So that was a good matchup to play into. Coming off that loss... Oh, sorry. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, you're coming off a loss. You had to win your last 3 rounds. So what were you thinking at that point?
Yeah, so I really... Like, in my head at this point, I'm like 4-1. I would want to do... I got 5-3 at Sydney last year. So I want to do better than I did at Sydney. So if I go 5-1, 6-1, like that's top 16, I'll be very happy. So I was like, off a loss, okay, we're just going to take it game by game this next set and just, go hard. And I was... so going into the next one, it was... To be honest, I don't remember too much about this set, but I do remember like leveraging the Goldango, and then after game 1, they stopped bringing their Tornadus, which made the game significantly easier because I was able to just taunt the Amoonguss, and basically leverage the fact that I had Rillaboom, which could KO his Urshifu and do massive damage to both Iron Hands and Arcanine. So once he stopped bringing Tornadus, then game 2 was very quickly won because, yeah, just having... This was a game I don't think I brought Kommo to just because they've got Amoonguss, Torn, and Goldango. And so this was like essentially Iron Hands Heatran lead with Urshifu and Rillaboom in the back. And that was enough to just take me across the line for that matchup, which was strong.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it seemed like you teched your team out to beat Amoonguss Goldango, super popular at the Latin American Championships, and so I'm sure that you're glad you were after playing that matchup.
Oh yeah, especially we'll get to it, but my last round definitely I was glad I teched out for that. But yeah, and then after that I was like, okay, one more game at top 16, and I've won some money for the first time, and that'd be so cool, like top 16, what a great result! I would be thrilled. And then I was so excited to see that it was Chopper's team because I was like, I've played this matchup thousands upon thousands of times. I need to win this. Like, if I don't win this, then I will feel bad because I've played this way too many times. And then, so basically, game 1, I basically just flow charted exactly what I told you when I was speaking about Torn teams. I led Iron Hands, I KO'd the Torn, and then they had Arcanine, Urshifu, and Chien-Pao in the back, and so Kommo was just able to win the whole game after that. They knew that it was... so then in the next game, it was really interesting. Oh, sorry, Game 1, I didn't bring Kommo. I basically just used Heatran and kind of blitzed through that matchup because I thought they would bring Flutter Mane game 1, so I wanted to like throw them off and not bring Kommo. Game 2, I went with my same game plan, and they brought 4 physical attackers and absolutely blitzed me. They led Rillaboom, Arcanine, and had Urshifu, Chien-Pao in the back, and it just basically got to a point where they had Urshifu and Chien-Pao on the field at the same time, and not many things can withstand that, so that was a game 2 wash for me. And then at this point, I'm sitting in like the team select, it's counting down, and I'm like, okay, you know what? If I go out of this tournament not getting top 16, I want to do it with Kommo. That's the whole reason I bring it. He bring 4 physical attackers, and if he makes the read to bring Flutter Mane after not bringing it to both game 1 and game 2, then fair play. So he didn't bring Flutter Mane. He led Urshifu and Rillaboom, and essentially turn 1, I had a free switch into Kommo. I Terra Grassed my Heatran. I got a free Earth Power off into the Urshifu. And after that, I was able to get +2, then +4. And it came down to he KO'd all my other mons. It was just Kommo against Chien-Pao, Rillaboom, and Urshifu. And it was so intense because the game came down to when he had 3 mons left, he went for Icicle Crash on Chien-Pao, and thankfully I didn't flinch. And after that, it was basically just a really long, drawn-out turn of him clicking fake out surging strikes, protect Woodhammer, surging strikes Woodhammer, and it was essentially just if Rillaboom got the crit, they won, but if not, then I won. And so it was very, very tense. And at this point, everyone was watching our set because of how long it had taken. And so it was like essentially a real life moment of once Kommo had won, everyone started applauding because it was like 3v1. Yeah, it was really cool. So that was like really hectic, but I was glad to pull that one up because they were very strong and played the team very well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you had going into your last round, you're winning in. How are you feeling going into that?
At this point, I felt happy to, if I got top 8, obviously I'd be thrilled. But at this point, I was like, this is the best I've ever done. I've got top 16 guaranteed because of my resistance. So I was like, you know what? If we don't win it, we don't win it. But I basically went straight from this match into the next one because I was the last person to finish. And so I went down, sat down, kind of went to the bathroom, took a breather, came back. And then I saw Pelipper Rain team and I was like, oh, I've played this before. I think I can do all right. So game 1 was good. They brought Pelipper and basically I just saved Iron Hands in the back and there wasn't much they could do into Terra Grass Heatran. Actually, the most crucial thing was that because I was running max speed modest Heatran, I was 1 point faster than Pelipper, which was massive because I was able to get a free Earth Power into their Iron Hands one turn. And so I think that dissuaded them from bringing Pelipper again to the set. So that was really huge, actually, EV decision-wise. So that was cool. Game 2, they basically spraying Iron Hands, Roaring Moon, Amoonguss, Goldango. And at one point in the match, I protected on my Fluttermane while they didn't Terra their Roaring Moon and went for Tailwind. And so in my head, I was like, whoa, that was really risky. But I basically know they always want to save Terra for Goldango in the back because my Heatran did 90% with an Earth Power in game 1. So I was like, oh, they definitely want to save Terra. They're not going to waste it on Roaring Moon when Goldango kind of needs it. So then game 3, I led basically my hardest hitting Pokemon. I led Fluttermane Urshifu into their Iron Hands Roaring Moon lead. And so I basically had to call whether they would go for Fake Out onto Urshifu. And I basically thought, no, there's no way they're going to do that. They always want to kill Fluttermane, and they're probably going to protect Roaring Moon. And I got the turn 100% correct. Roaring Moon actually switched into Amoonguss, which was even better for me because they lost the booster energy. And I clicked Moonblast and Close Combat into Iron Hands, and it killed. So the Moonblast EVs mattered a lot because those two moves combined only do about 55% each to Iron Hands. So that mattered a lot. It KO'd, and then after that, he knew as well that because he didn't bring Pelipper, he had nothing that could deal damage to Heatran because Knockoff was doing nothing, Breaking Swipe was doing nothing, and, he needed to set up a nasty plot if you wanted to do anything. Mm-hmm. That was really awesome. And then also crucially at one point, because of the Rillaboom set, I was able to finish off the Goldango from 25% with Grassy Glide, while he was trying to go for Tailwind Make It Rain. So that was really huge. So it was that set kind of showed me that all my EVs and my last minute changes really mattered. And so, basically when I got top 8, my friends have pictures of me with my headphones on, clicking the last turn, and then the headphones coming off, realizing I'd won. And so it's really cool to have those photos because it was such a weird experience being oh my God, I actually made top cut. And that was really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, so one thing that, you had to experience that we haven't had to deal with, in the United States in a while is you had a top 8 cut, which means you had top cut the next day, instead of having a day 2 Swiss system. And so, for my experience in those, I have had a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of preparation for Top Cut. How did you feel? Did you prepare at all? How did you feel going into it?
Well, I think so. I knew obviously who I was playing the next day because of the top 8 system. But they didn't release the pace after day 1. I'm not sure if this was deliberate or by accident, but it mattered a lot because essentially I had known from sitting next to him a few times that he definitely had a Dusclops. I knew he had a Roaring Moon, a Iron Hands, and an Amoonguss, but that was basically all I knew about the team. Because I hadn't, like, none of my friends had played him, and, you know, I couldn't, you know, people wouldn't tell me. Unfortunately for me, I played 2 of his friends, so he knew exactly what my team was. But basically, I had the game plan of, oh, he's got Dusclops. Every Dusclops I've played, I've just been able to lead Fake Out plus Taunt, and they've been able to do nothing. So in my head, the entire day, I was like, okay, because I couldn't really prep because I didn't know his full team. I was like, okay, I'm going to lead Fake Out plus Taunt, and then we'll go from there. And then as soon as I sat down and I saw the Terror Ghost Amoonguss, that was like really bad for me because it literally threw my whole Fake Out plus Taunt out the window. And it's literally the only counter I've seen so far that's been able to stop the Taunt Flutter Mane in its entirety of just being effective. So game 1, I still led it, and he made very smart plays of like switching to Heatran and then, you know, just he essentially get up a free Trick Room at one point, and I was kind of just worn down by Iron Hands and Heatran. And then in game 2, I led Fluttermane Urshifu, and he was just able to get up a free Trick Room because he could just go for Rage Powder Trick Room. So it was like literally the Terror Ghost was the main reason I lost that match, in my opinion, because otherwise Kommo has a very good matchup as long as I can, you know, get rid of Dusclops with Urshidark. But, you know, it was a hard matchup after that. But Lewis is such a great player. He's got so many accomplishments. So he played it very well for, you know, what he had to do anyway. So I wasn't like, you know, afterwards I was like, top 8, this is awesome. I was like, I generally thought Lewis was going to win it because he had such a cool take on the balance team. But yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds really unfortunate that you didn't really have a chance to prepare. I feel like, you know, that information advantage is so huge. And it's one of the most annoying things about VGC. Again, having Day 2 Swiss sort of alleviates that. And that's one of the really nice things that we've had recently.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that you didn't get to that, you know, 6 people short of having that same experience.
No, that's all right. Hopefully next time, that's what we're gunning for.
Yeah, and you know what? Top 8 is a really, really impressive accomplishment. Again, especially, you said it's your 2nd regional?
Yes.
Yeah. So a really, really incredible accomplishment, especially for your 2nd event, and with a very, very cool team. So definitely would recommend that you try this team out. I think it's a newer take on Kommo-o that is maybe a little more adept for this metagame than the version Michael had posted a month ago at this point. So I definitely would recommend that you try this team out. And of course, the pace will be in the description down below. Jack, thank you for coming on the channel. Those are all my questions. Did you have any final words or shout outs that you wanted to give?
Yeah, well, thank you. Please use the team. It's been a lot of work. So I would appreciate, you know, if I saw it on ladder, it'd be awesome. I would like to shout out VGC Trainer School because they kind of helped me get into the competitive scene and bring my name out there, so that they're awesome and I love those guys. So thank you to everyone there. Thank you to Lord Kai and the Sydney community, local community, who kind of helped me get ready for this tournament and just generally supported me. And of course, my girlfriend, Sarah, who has to put up with the fact that she knows nothing about Pokemon and just knows I stare at a screen for way too long. So,
yeah. Yeah, well, thank you again for coming on the channel, and congratulations again for the top 8 performance. And yeah, definitely would recommend you try out the team. And until next time, we'll see you all later.